A great conversation, women rights, a dialogue. Today we're celebrating the International Youth Day, and it's a great day to have this conversation, Women Land Rights Dialogue. It's a conversation that is powered by the UN Women. We have Action Aid, we have Oxfam, we have Troclair, and of course partnered with the Women Land Rights Movement. It's a conversation you and I can tap into. Go on Twitter, the hashtag will be Women Land Rights 2021. Now, to make sense of this conversation, land is a form of wealth. Many of us know that. Basic resource for agriculture, which is the backbone of our economy. But according to the research from UBOS, it shows that women in this country can only have access to land for usage, but cannot own land. And those who can own it cannot, entirely own the entire piece of land. That is the conversation we're having today. Now, to bring it to context, with me I have Mr. Jimmy Ochom, the Land Rights Coordinator from Oxfam, Uganda, a lawyer and a leader at the Land Rights Program in Uganda. We have Abena Bachide, a lawyer and a specialist in access to justice, governance, law, and she's currently the Director, Access to Justice Program at the LandNet Uganda. Again, we have Mary Frances Birungi Odong, the Executive Director of the Uganda Community-Based Association for Women and Children Welfare. She'll be joining us via Zoom. And we have Mr. Dennis Obo. Dennis Obo is the Head of Public Relations at the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development. And we have Agnes Chirabu, the Executive Director, Food Rights Alliance. And finally, we have Kemigisha Elizabeth, an advocacy officer from FIDA Uganda. Now, you could wonder why we're having FIDA Uganda here, because FIDA does far beyond just arbitrating marital issues. They equally cover a lot of things. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
We have started this conversation. I would like to start with I think, Bena, we had a conversation earlier this week. I want to start with you. When we look at the land rights today, what do you make of it, especially to the women?
Oh, land rights. Land rights.
That side makes a lot of...
Yes.
Does it worry you?
Especially in relation to women.
Yes.
The rural women, who are the majority.
Yep.
Live... Okay, I'm also a woman.
But you're in the urban centers.
I think so. But, okay, but I think it cuts across all women. When you talk about land rights, they're in three major categories. We're talking about access. We're talking about use, access, use, but we're also talking about ownership rights. Okay? So a woman is supposed to have access to land. She's supposed to be able to use that land productively, but she's also supposed to own
the land.
The question is, when we look at the legal and policy framework in Uganda, it basically provides for all that. It talks about, the Constitution of Uganda talks about gender equality, all women are equal like men. Every Ugandan has a right to own property, and in most cases, property is land, okay? So when you talk about the woman, she's protected. The land policy, the National Land Policy of 2013, talks about putting in place structures, laws that enable women to own, access, and use the land. When you look at the Land Act and the subsequent amendments, they all provide for that. Question is, are these rights guaranteed? Are they enforceable?
Are they feasible on the ground?
Are they feasible? Realistically, only women, majority of Ugandan women, have access rights and usability rights. They can use the land.
But they can't
But
own.
when it comes to ownership, that's when the tables turn.
And that brings me to my question then. Do you believe that the formulation of what we call the land rights could be the ultimate, objective, or would it make us reach the level we need to reach of ownership? Unfortunately,
that's what the law provides. That for you to, in most cases, okay, let me just give a simple example. Right now, we're talking about access to roads. We're talking about access. Okay, let me talk about the basic, like the WEP program. the Uganda Women's Economic Program, a program which is supposed to benefit majority of the Ugandans, and we're looking at the rural woman. For you to access that service or those emyoga, you know, those financial facilities, you have to be in a group. If you're not in that group, that is part of formalization. You have to register. You have to belong to a group. You have to be a member. So for you to be a member, you have to formalize that process. Meaning you have to register yourselves with the government structures or the district structures so that you're able to access the resources. Now, in most cases, the resources are provided to these women mainly to, now that's where the usability comes. So it also applies, because I access this financial, the little money that is being provided to enable me maybe produce chia seeds in mass production. I'm just giving you a basic example. So these chia seeds are produced in different plots of land, which women have access and usage, but they don't own. But as a group, once they own this land, it is registered in their names as a group, then they're able to actually productively, you know. So we are giving with one hand, enabling with one hand, but at the same time, in reality, the practice is different. So the formalization is guaranteed by, if you want to get a loan, you have to, in most cases, security that is requested for from banks or even the micro-saving institutions. In most cases, it is land. How many women actually have land? You know, how many women actually have land registered in their names? That is why we're here.
That is the conversation.
Yes.
Now, this brings me to Obo here. Obo, I'm grateful that we have a man on site who believes in this. I personally believe in that, and I don't own land as me, but I made sure that the land I buy, it's owned by us, me and my wife. So I can't sell it unless she signs, and she can't sell it as either until I'm in sync with it. Obo, from where you are, what is the status of the land information system? The land information system in tracking security of the tenure of women in this country?
Yeah, Chairman, my name is not Obo. My name is Jimmy.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Jimmy Ochom. Yes, sorry.
Definitely go to Obo.
Yes.
Who is online with that virtually.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Obo, I'm sure you're there, and you're in Minister of Lands. You can give us this answer. Can you hear us? Mr. Obo? Can you unmute your mic? Okay, I think they're trying to get around it. We'll get to that, but I will still need an answer to that. Coming back to Kemigisha here, Kemigisha, what does the security tenure mean for the vulnerable women in the rural settings of this country?
Thank you, Andrew. Tenure is affected by many and usually very contradicting laws and procedures and customs. And for the rural woman, there are even other layers of discriminatory, dynamics and strata that affect their security of tenure.
Like?
For example, if you find that in a household, for example, right now, if I am not officially married to my partner and he passes, it's going to be very difficult for me to, for example, get registered as part owner of that particular piece of land, regardless of what my contribution was to that. So for many rural women, like Bena mentioned, there are many dynamics in place that make it difficult for us to say the security of tenure for those women. One, individually, like I've mentioned, there is already these dynamics that make it difficult for them. They do not have access, they do not have usability. And in places where they have usability, usually they are not able to claim ownership, either as individuals or as communities. Now, what would secure land tenure look like for a woman in a rural area? It would mean that she has access, that she has use, that is not limited to whoever she is co-owning it with, or whoever is in the community if it's communal land being used by the whole community. It means that she does not have to go through extra hurdles to be able to claim usability or to be able to transfer usability to even the next person, say their children or their other partner or etc. It is whoever they would want to use that land with. So that's what for us we are looking at for the rural woman.
That's
does she have the right to use the land? And most importantly, is that right enforceable? Is it registrable? Is it entrenched in the law? Because many times, like Bena mentioned, many of these things are in our law, our Land Act, our national land policy.
We have very good policies.
That you know, is helping in the implementation of most of these things in the Land Act and the Constitution 237, Article 237. But our women, is that right enforceable for many rural women? Yeah, is it enforceable right now if we still have Chibanja owners, like people who have interest as Chibanja owners being just of land?
Okay.
So for the rural woman, we are looking at those. Is it entrenched in the law? Is there access? Is she able to enjoy the right to use that land? And is that right enforceable without going through that extra hurdle?
Now, coming to my fellow colleague here, Ochom.
Yes.
You as a man, and I'm very grateful, you're a lawyer and you lead the land rights program in Uganda. When you hit the field and you go out there, what are the men saying? Because I'm sure you interact with them.
What about me?
What are the men saying? And what are you saying?
Yes, indeed. What are the men saying? You know that for the past 10 years, we have been doing a lot of advocacy for the women. And I must say we are gaining ground.
Nice.
We are trying to reduce the gap. And as we do that, we are seeing so many other things that come in with that. And that is what men are saying, that we are over-empowering women.
That's what they're saying?
Yes.
Why are they feeling insecure?
I think it's just a cultural thing. It's
that's why I want
it's a
to
cultural
come
thing.
through. Given that you've gone the ground and the cultural dynamics are not in tandem with this agenda, are the cultural leaders a little bit, embracing this conversation? Are they understanding why we are pushing this agenda?
Yes, I will begin with talking about my own culture, the Iteso. So we by the way, my culture really supports women, and I will explain it in one dimension. For example, if a man is distributing his property in Teso, he distributes his property according to his wives.
Yeah.
That is if he has three.
You've used the word wives.
Yes.
But
So every wife has a piece of land that belongs to her and her children. So, but of course...
So you're not allowed to marry if you don't have another plot of land?
No, that changes the whole dynamic.
A lot of sense.
I wish that, but I must say I would like to concentrate on something which my colleagues have talked about, something a little bit moving away from what she has been discussing, and saying, I know that it's difficult. Some women are not accessing land and don't own land, but as I explained, some of the customs allow some women to at least access. So Oxfam did a study where they were trying to look at, okay, the few who have been able to access, how are they being transformed economically? And we actually realized that those few who actually own land or have at least access of the land are able to change their lives. But of course that is a small number, and we believe that the number will keep growing. So that is what is happening in the field.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then what is the implication of establishing what we call the customary land register in securing the tenure?
Okay, so the customary land registry is not yet in the books, but it is in the policy. You know that Uganda is a very funny country. We got the policy after the laws came in, so we are trying to catch up.
I'm glad you're in Uganda.
So we are trying to catch up.
Yeah.
And it so happens that all the other tenure systems, freehold, leasehold, Milo, have registries. We have the Milo registry, we have the freehold registry, and the customary registry is not very vivid. And so we are facing challenges of capturing transactions that happen on customary land, and which is almost 80% of the land that is owned in this country. So that means, one, the government is losing out on income because you're only concentrating on land in urban center, which is only 10% or 18% if we really get the exact figures. So the government needs to step up and register every transaction. You know that you can make a transaction from a person who has over 200 million can make a transaction in, let me say, Karamoja or Kabira Maido, and no one will know that they made a transaction. And then they own big chunks of land, and people start crying because we don't know how that person acquired the land. Yet, when you're making a transaction in maybe say a customary, a mile of freehold, the transaction is detected in the system, in the National Land Information System. But for customary, you can't detect that. So we need that to be in place so that we can capture every transaction that happens on customary land.
And that takes me to Mr. Obo, who is actually online with us. Dennis, can you hear me? Mr. Obo, can you hear me?
You can hear, but you can't.
Okay, you can hear me. It's an honor that I'm having someone from Ministry of Lands on Zoom. That gives me hope that someone far in the country can possibly connect to the portal of the lands. Now, Mr. Bo, we want to understand what is the status of the land information system in tracking the security tenure of women.
Now, the land information system, actually, government has done a lot. We do have 22 ministry zonal offices where the land information system has been decentralized countrywide. Only that it is currently covering freeholds, leaseholds, and minors. And in total, we have just about 1 million titles. We have brought on board the valuation and physical planning aspects in addition to the land registration and land administration functions. We have developed public and corporate portals which will soon be available to the public to access so that they can see or get whatever information they have online. The registries are now operating on a first-in, first-out basis as transactions come in. The land information system is actually linked to other databases, MIRA and URA. So we have actually put in place one of the very best systems in Africa. Indeed, many countries have come to benchmark on this system: Kenya, South Africa, Mali, Southern Sudan, Tanzania, among others. Now, I would like actually to assure everyone that the system is working, and it has reduced the number of days for carrying out transactions. Previously, to over 300 days before the system came in place, to now, just slightly below 25 days. Some transactions you can also get within 1 day. Now, the investment that government put into this was about 70 million US dollars. But so far, the revenue that has been generated is about 808 billion. So this is good enough. And I know we should be able to do more as we move forward. Thank you.
Dennis, before you go, I need to understand the successes and the gaps in the of the certificate of customary ownership of land in advancement of the women's land rights in Uganda. Because when you say the system was rolled out and it's actually working, but earlier on, Ochom just made it clear that it's very hard to track these. Well, you can track it as government, but how do you know that it's a man, rather a man who has sold land? Do we see women captured in the system?
Well, talking about the customary certificates and the customary tenure system, what government has done so far is that the law is in place, and the law provides that certificates be issued at the sub-county. So these documents are documents that belong to the recorder at the sub-county. They are issued by the sub-county chief, who's the recorder, and he does keep these records. So we have had over, I think, 30,000 certificates issued to families, individuals, women and men, clans, sub-clans. Now, the next phase that we are moving to under this is that we have actually carried out some workflows, which workflows are going to enable for the current CCOs to be migrated into the LIS. We have put in place workflows. We have asked some of the development partners to provide and certify the CCOs so that we do upload the polygons and the registered owners' names. Now, of course, these are mandatory fields. We want also to include the customary land identification numbers, which will help us. Of course, it's like the block and plot for those in the other systems. So all this information we have. And what is remaining now is to migrate and pretest the integration process. And then we bring on board all the certificates that have been done by partners at the sub-county. We are hoping that we shall continue to issue them at the sub-county and that the system will provide for mechanisms to upload and migrate them from the sub-county, and ultimately they will be into the land information system. So it shouldn't be a worry. Government is handling, and government will do this, as we have done for the other tenure systems.
I have the best confidence in the government that is going to do this, but the 30,000 certificates, your speech is in future tense, that they will be uploaded. They will be, how long is the transition going to be of the CCOs? And how long does it take for one? Because if it's a man and it's within the system, it takes a moment to reflect that, oh, Andrew made a transaction with a chum. When it comes to customary, why is it dragging?
Is that to me?
How long is it going to take for the transition of the CCOs to capture these certificates? Because you're saying you have like 30,000 certificates. When are they going to reflect on the system?
Yes, the process has begun. And we are at the level of pretesting and migrating. We have actually begun with the CCOs that have been done by the sub-county and UPOBAC. As long as we have the parameters matching and everything, it's okay. My migration takes just a number of days. So it shouldn't worry that it will take so long. No. Once we have the migration done, after we have checked and confirmed all the data, it has been verified, it has been signed off, the shape files have been checked, migration is just a matter of just a few days. So it shouldn't be worrying us. Now, we have also provided that after the migration is done on a routine basis, like is done from all MZOs, there shall be uploads to update the information at the NLIC. So really, in the next 6 months, we should have something in place, and anyone would be able to check from the system the transactions that originate from the sub-counties, like they check the transactions from the various zonal offices.
Thank you so much, James. Just hang in there. I'll get back to you a little later. When you hear what he's saying, what comes in your mind? You seem not to conform to what he actually alludes to.
I'm just a bit worried. Like,
why are you worried? What's worrying
every
you?
Ugandan out there. I'll just maybe take us back for our viewers to sort of have a picture about why we are still worried about the update for Ministry of Lands right now. Article 237 of the Constitution elevated that status of customary land to freehold, milo, and leasehold, right? That is the 1995 Constitution. The Land Act came in place. We have the National Land Policy, which came in place 15 years later after the Land Act. I'm just bringing this so that
to context.
To context, right? And all this sort of are trying to remove the kind of, what can I call them, challenges that a lot of people were facing with dealing with protection of their interests in customary land, who are mostly women, right? Now, since 1995, the Land Act comes into place, like I've mentioned, and it brings into a tool, several tools to bring about the protection of rights and interests in customary land. And one of those were the certificates of customary ownership, right? these are so many years later, but right now we are still talking about rolling it out. The land problem in Uganda is one that even our forefathers were dealing with. So it means it's urgent. Every single day it's urgent. It's a natural resource. Livelihoods of people are based on this. But it's so many years later that the certificate of customary ownership right now, we are still talking about it in the future. And right now, many of the works that have happened in implementation or in seeing that people access this has mostly been done by civil society. Now, where my worry is that civil society cannot take over the primary role of the government leading these processes, right? Because there are structures in place. So what if now the civil society wakes up in the morning and there's no funding? Right? What happens then? There should be structures in place. So civil society cannot be the one leading many of these processes. And in the few districts, about 8, Katakwi, some districts in the east, in the southwestern, you can Kabale, where pilot, let me call them sessions have been had, we've seen that it's been civil society leading these processes. So that still worries me. So when Mr. Obo updates us that they're still in the process, it sort of worries me. Is the government prioritizing this issue? And especially because we've known most of the people that face problems, right, are women because of their interest in customary land. So it's a bit worrying that so many years after 1995, if we indeed recognize customary land tenure being at the same level as the rest, I think then it should be prioritized.
Okay. Ocho, her submission is very valid, according to what you earlier alluded to. But again, Obo is giving us hope.
Yes.
After many years. He's saying that they have so far registered 30,000 certificates and all this. What are your grim worries within the system he's talking about, especially with the customary marriage, rather land?
Okay, there are many intricacies that are involved in making sure that we perfect that system. Because you know that the constitution of Uganda acknowledges customs and how they manage themselves, including how they manage their lands. So you are not going to impose how an Acholi manages their land on an Iteso.
True.
So meaning we will have to go down and write down a uniform kind of law for every custom, which will be fixed in the system to understand, so that when you own a certain piece of land, for example, when you're in Kampala here and you have a certificate and it is showing land, this land, where does it come from? You know that this is actually land, just like Milo is.
Oh yeah.
You see, Milo was custom, but somehow it found its way into the laws, and you see the way the Baganda were managing their land somehow sneaked itself into the law, and that's why you see they're in order, and they are organized in the way they do their things. So we expect something of that sort. So when he tells me it is coming sooner, and yet many of those intricacies are not being handled, then I also get to worry. But also, I must say that those that have been mentioned, for example, the CCOs that they have been mentioning in the various pilots, well, we have recognized that indeed they are doing a good job. In one of the studies that we did, we realized that every woman that had a CCO, their land is not easily grabbed. You get it? But those without CCOs, it's very easy for someone to say, even to give you a very small value, because it's your word against mine. That land belongs to me, my father told me so. You get it? So that's all you have. So how would you negotiate with an investor?
You can't.
But when you have your document, you can easily negotiate with an investor. So while we know that it may take some time to perfect that that system, I know that for the small pilots that we are doing a good job. Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
All right. Online, is Francis, Mary Francis, are you with us? Because there are a couple of players in this conversation I would like to tap into. Francis Birungi, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Francis Birungi?
Yes, I am. I'm right here.
Nice to see you, Francis. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Now, we're talking about these very critical issues, and thanks for saving time that we're talking here. So, from your perspective, Francis, are customary or tradition laws and culture plus the religious beliefs, are they in one way or the other a threat to securing the tenure for women's rights in this country on land?
Yeah, thank you, Andrew, for that question. It's a very good question. And it's very good because it's a correct question in the sense that indeed customary and traditional norms and also some religious laws and norms continue to constrain women in terms of their ability to exercise their land rights. And really, this really comes from our system. As Uganda, we are a patriarchal society, and in this society, we see that the system kind of favors men. It's a male-dominated system. So we find that many of the norms and customs that are related to how land is managed and how land is accessed tend to discriminate against women and girls at household level, but also at community level. So indeed, it's very true that these norms continue to exist, continue to affect women and girls to be able to fully enjoy the whole spectrum of rights that Bana mentioned, the ability to access the rights, the ability to own, but also to make decisions on this land. So it's a very big problem. And one thing that I want to say about the norms is that really, when you look at the challenges that women are facing in regard to access and ownership and control over land, most of the challenges that we tend to deal with, to do with, for example, the registration issue, the fact that women are not able to access justice and so forth, all these are really surface problems. They are surface problems. They're a manifestation of a bigger problem. They're consequences of a big problem. So the traditional norms, the traditional norms and laws that I talked about are the root problem. That is where the real problem is. And if that is not uprooted, if that problem is not gotten out, then we shall continue to see all these manifestations that we are seeing that women are suffering today. So you're seeing that some of the traditional customs or norms that exist. Someone would ask a question, what are these norms? Everything seems to be okay. But the fact is that in many communities, in many households, we are seeing that fathers are not bequeathing land to their daughters. And when you look at customary land, mostly land is acquired through inheritance. That means land is passed on through inheritance. However, being that we are in a patriarchal society, this land, which is a critical resource, it is passed on through the male lineage. That leaves out women and girls in terms of ability to just acquire the land itself to start with. So the fact that fathers are not bequeathing land to their daughters, the fact that girls and women cannot inherit property, husbands are not co-owning. I heard you at the beginning of this show saying that whenever you buy land, you make sure your wife, there are very few men who are doing that. Majority of us Ugandans, majority of the men are not co-owning land. They buy the land and put it in their names alone, not their wives, not their daughters. At most, they will add their sons because they feel that is where the protection lies, but not so much with the girls or with their wives. We are seeing issues where people are not writing wills. We are seeing where there is no joint decision making in the homes. When it comes to matters of land, that is a no-go area for women. Issues of land, when you look at household level, when you look at our existing land management institutions, that is a no-go area for women. All this is coming from our culture, our customs, our norms that really discriminate against women and girls in relation to land and property. And what we are seeing from this is that we see that women are suffering a lot to be able to exercise their land rights, but also a lot of land-related gender-based violence, a lot of disinheritance, land grabbing, physical and sexual violence related to the land conflicts, inability to access justice, evictions. All these challenges, they affect both men and women, but women tend to face more of these challenges because of the fact that our system is not supportive towards men and women. And therefore, what we need to do is to integrate gender transformative approaches, even in the land registration processes themselves. The discussion that you're having with the panelists that discussed the CCO process, it is very important to integrate gender transform, to look at the root cause of the problem, to identify the social norms and transform them in ways that will benefit men and women equally.
I love the energy that is there. Bena, when she talks about it, you really feel that she's one of those women who have seen this happening.
Yeah.
But one thing that has actually come to me, and thank God she hit about it, it's the gender-based violence when it gets to land. We have run stories here on TV where the issue started of a woman asking a chapa chiriwa. And when a man dies, the relatives come and they say, where is the will? She has hinted about that. And she has alluded, Frances has alluded that we need to uproot the traditional norms that don't conform with the conversation. Then my question comes, do we need to uproot or we need to engage the traditional norms?
Thank you, Andrew. That's an interesting question. Uprooting and engaging.
And engaging, because
I think the reality is we need to do both. Because some cultures might say they actually preserve they protect women's land rights.
like the Itesot.
Like the Itesot. Like the Acholi. Acholi, when it comes to identifying land, Andrew, if you are an Acholi, identifying land where you're supposed to build your house, now that you've grown, you're now a man, you bring a wife, trust me, it's the woman who's supposed to identify that land. Shows you the boundary that, Andrew, you're entitled to that piece of land.
It's the woman in charge.
It's the woman in charge.
Nice.
But the question is, she's given that decision. Does she sit on the panel of the Kwekwaro, for example? Okay?
It's a no-go zone.
So it's a no-go zone. And that's what she's alluding to. That there are structures that we need to engage. Now, that's where the engagement comes in.
Oh, yes.
But we need to uproot that. The role of the woman is not only to identify and show the boundary marks. But the question is, why is the woman showing you the boundary marks? Because from time immemorial, the role of the woman was to ensure there's food production. And it's still the same. When you look at when you look at the GDP of Uganda, it is us women who are contributing. Okay. Rural woman, the one who's actually using the land. I might hire someone to develop land for my benefit.
Oh, yes.
But majority of the women who sell food to us in the markets use land, and they're contributing to the economy of the country. But the question is, can she move beyond that 50 by 50, for example? She can't. Why? Because the land which she's producing her food crops from is owned by someone else. The decisions are made by the clan members. Majority of the clan members are men. So that means you need to uproot, but we also need to engage, because they've also realized that there's a key role that women play when it comes to production of food. Now, when you talk about GBV, majority of the cases, you've talked about the family coming and uprooting the woman and saying, hey, you talked about this title, a chapa. Where is it? He wrote a will. No,
for starters, if a woman starts this conversation casually, Mwami, where is the chapa? Chaos breaks.
Yes.
Because
there's a lot, and there's a lot, because there's a lot of mistrust between these two.
Oh, yes, indeed.
Why? Because first of all, when they were purchasing their land, I was not party to that. And that brings us to the other question of, are you involving women in decision-making, not only at household level, at all the levels? Are you integrating our concerns within these structures? Are you enabling us to have a process, or to enable us to learn This is what these procedures are all about, to enable me to acquire the CCO. That conversation is what Francis has alluded to, is a no-go area for women, because we do not know. We always say, you go and look after the children. When the men are talking, no, you go and first bring tea. You're on point. So the question is, now, where is the title? Because she was not part of that process. Francis has clearly mentioned it. Most of us, most of us are witnesses. If you're even lucky to be a witness. If not, if you're a witness, and remember, a witness, you have no rights. You're just a witness saying that, yes, you know you are part of the conversation.
Yeah.
But when he decides to sell off the land, and that also brings me to the other aspect, that we are looking at the rural woman, majority who are not married. We are looking at, I talked about the laws giving an opportunity for women to actually get loans and all that. You can get a loan and you provide your house as security or your land. But there's something called, you need spousal consent. But who is a spouse in Uganda? A spouse is that one who's married.
Legally.
Legally. Church, mosque, or the registrar, or Hindu, or, you know, those are traditionally. Those are the people we're talking about. But when you look at majority of Ugandans who are not married, they're not part of that conversation. They don't have any decision-making powers, because you are just my girlfriend. You're just my boyfriend. You're
staying partner with the babies with me.
Yes, you are my boyfriend. That's your title, and I'm your girlfriend. So anytime we can separate, and that's where the Ombuza, who are you to ask me? Were you there when I was purchasing this property? You were not. I brought you. You know? Hey. Yes, Andrew, that is the reality. So that's where the DV starts from.
Well, this is a conversation you can tap into online. The hashtag is women rights, women land rights 2021. I'll pick some of your questions there. I can feel my phone buzzing. I'll tap into it. Agnes Chirabo, you're here with us. Agnes, are you with us? Agnes? Agnes is one of those ladies who actually look a lot around food security. Good to see you, Agi.
Good afternoon and good evening, and whatever the time zone somebody is watching us from.
Agnes.
And I'm happy to be here.
Agnes, you're very international, my friend. You've taken it a notch higher there. But good to see you. So we are talking about this. Francis, as they alluded, something very pertinent, the gender-based violence. And then when Benna came through, she again, highlighted something to do with food. And this brings me to you. How does this system threaten the household investment, especially in agriculture, where you're very much grounded, Aggie?
Yes. You see, Andrew, I'm really very excited to respond to your question. But having listened into Francis and Benna in the discussion, I thought I could take just a few minutes of my time to tell the viewers out there my personal experience. When my dad was about to die, I was 16 years and I was the eldest, and our youngest sibling was 3 months, but he's a boy. So my father called for 2 of his brothers and asked my mother to invite one of her sisters that she can confide in, but also my paternal auntie. They closed themselves in the house and chased us out. A meeting that I later learned that our father was making his will. So in that meeting, the will writing meeting, there were 3 women, my mother, her sister, and my maternal auntie. And then there was my father and 2 of his brothers, well balanced. But what were the outcomes of the meeting? Which is the will. They had given all the boys land, including the 3 months old. And I was not given even a spoonful of soil. And yet my father on his deathbed he kept writing a verbal will to me, according a responsibility to me to take care of my siblings. And he even went ahead and informed his brothers and, you know, the participants of the meeting that that girl should take care of her siblings. But when he was giving out resources that would help me to execute the duty that he had asked me to execute, he did not give me the resources. And I know this is happening to so many other people. Francis talked about values and norms. For me, actually, I go beyond that, and I talk about beliefs. I think we need now to attack the beliefs, because we know that within the same customs, within the same history, there are indeed men who gave their daughters land. And an example is my maternal grandfather. He gave out his property to even the daughters, including my mother, although my uncles ended up grabbing it from her, but he gave. And he was from the same system.
Yeah.
Know of men who actually divide their estate and give their wives land. I will not mention names, but they are not of this age only now. So I think there are customs, there are traditions, but there is also belief. Some people, it is no longer the custom, it is no longer the norm, it is what they believe in their heads. Now, land ownership and food security. You know, women, by and large, having listened to Bana and Ochom and Francis, are simply laborers. Andrew, if you're working land that you do not own, you are a laborer. And this is the reality from the rhetoric. I have worked with the communities. This is what is happening. Because our agriculture is largely dependent on family labor, and the entire rural flock is dependent on agriculture. Upon the coming of the new rains, Mr. Head of the household mobilizes his resources to go and farm the parcel of land that is going to bring money. This is where the best parcel of land is chosen for that purpose. Labor is pulled to that purpose to begin with. It is the parcel that is tilled at the start of the rains. It is the one that receives the best inputs. And at the end, when everybody is exhausted, the rains have come down. This is when Mr. Right decides to tell Madame that I think you can go and grow your potatoes elsewhere. And more often than not, the women are given degraded lands to grow food. And how does it relate to GBV? At the end of the day, the output is low, but the basic need in the household is the food. So they start quarreling because the woman, and she doesn't think it is true, the woman labored as the rains started, but she's not even allowed access to that part of the produce. But Mr. Right, who is in ownership of that part of the produce that we all labored for, is also interested in the little that I produced on the marginalized lands. So this is how it tarries in. If you're not in full control of the resources that you're using for production, you are a laborer. Andrew, you're in Pakasi. You are in Pakasi and you can only be rewarded at that front, and nothing much and nothing less. So no wonder many farming households are again food insecure. And when they become food insecure, they become very violent. So when we are talking about the issues of women land rights, we are not talking about it because we are women. We are talking about them as issues of national importance, as issues of stability, as issues, of everything that you know food contributes to development of a given community, a given society, and a given economy.
Thank you so much, Aggie. I'm going to tap a little bit into that. The conversation is getting heated up on Twitter. I would suggest that let's use words that are a little bit civil, especially the men on Twitter. There is one here who says that we should normalize strategic litigation to improve jurisprudence. For purposes of this, and someone here says, Sandy, be very, I won't read your tweet because Sandy doesn't believe men should be part of this conversation. But let's keep the conversation going. I'll take a break for now, and when we return, we're still going to look at what could be the hurdles that are hindering us as a country to get to this conversation in a deeper analysis. The hashtag is Women Land Rights at 2021. Let your tweets come in good faith on how we can find lasting solution to women owning land. This is powered by Oxfam, not forgetting UN Women, and of course we have True Claire and Action Aid. We're coming back shortly. Women Land Rights Dialogue, a conversation on Twitter. The hashtag is Women Land Rights 2021. I've been positioned to tap your feed if you send me any of that feedback, as long as it's very strategic and it's not in any way abusive. I'll read your tweet. If you're very pissed, like someone here sent me an inbox, says, Chamagero, this conversation is wrong because you're amplifying women issues. Bagenda tufukire ekizibu mujja, I'm very disappointed in you. Well, you have your right and I'll respect it, but this is a conversation we need to have. Going forward, let's talk about something. Now, it is a man complaining. Ochom, I'm going to come back to you. And Dennis Obo just hung in there. Let's talk about Kameza money. Do you believe that Kameza money is another approach the society has used to keep women in that club? Because they give women Kameza, they buy their own land on the other side, but still the women will put their sons as their security. They still lack the tenacity and the strength to say, this is my property. How is Kameza money sabotaging the agenda?
No, I must say Kameza money is not necessarily sabotaging the agenda, but I want to give a small story, if you can allow me for 2 minutes.
In 2 minutes.
In just 2 minutes. So we work with a certain group of ladies in Pacheco, and one of them gave us a story that her husband gives her money every day. And I must say, Kameza is not only given by men to women, even women can actually give Kameza to men.
Do.
That's a conversation for another
So that's, I know that's a conversation for another time. And many of those ones who are complaining about this issue, I must say they are going to complain. But this lady says she was getting Kameza money from her husband for 5 years. And she kept 10% of that Kameza money. Deliberately. I mean, somewhere in the piggy bank or in a pot.
Yeah, there's
yes, in the circle actually. And when she realized she had about 5 million, and she could acquire actually about 15 acres of land, which she acquired. And when you look at her, and she tells you that story, and you look at her currently, she's so empowered that she looks like somebody who has benefited from that. So while with this
husband, no,
of course, of course, it so happens that she was living with, because if a man can live Kameza every day, that means he's an understanding man. Yes.
Wait, you don't live Kameza every day?
Yes. So that means he's an understanding man and knows what it means to be married. So why am I bringing this story? Is that while we say we know that there are very many difficulties that are involved in women accessing, using, and owning land, let us first look at concentrate on looking at encouraging women, to those women who can be able to, who have a leeway or a chance to be able to acquire some of that property, be able to acquire some land, to also acquire that land, however small it is. Because I know that there are very many avenues that women can have to access money. And I know that yesterday I was hearing someone talk about slay queens. You give them money and they waste about 300,000 on hair, and that money can actually be saved, and you acquire land. So let us encourage our women out there. I know that there are many other avenues of owning land, which are inheritance, through marriage, through birth, but how about through purchase? Why can't we also encourage women to do small businesses that they can support them in buying more land and improving their livelihoods?
Thank you so much, Chum. Francis, Mary Francis, are you still with me? Mary Francis? Okay, Mary Francis, can I have a look at her? Mary Francis, oh, finally, she's here. Mary Francis, when you read the bitterness online of some of the men in this conversation, they feel empowering a woman with a land right, you are losing your manhood. And you alluded to traditional beliefs and religious beliefs we need to uproot. And then Benna came in and said, at times we have to engage, and then the other side we have to uproot. How do we bring men on board that you can have these conversations amicably and there is no fear, all egos are not, well, you know, are massaged better?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I really understand where that comes from. It still comes from the system within which we operate. So for me, it does not surprise me to get that kind of reaction, because these conversations are many times not comfortable conversations, but they are conversations that we must have, because we have moved away from a certain lifestyle. The economy has evolved. We really need to look at life differently. And even if these conversations are uncomfortable, we must have these conversations. And I know that they are uncomfortable because they are a threat to the power. When you have power, when you hold on to power, you don't want that power to go. You know what is happening. I don't want to get into politics. I'm not saying anything about politics. But you know that whenever anyone wants to take away your power, if anyone wants to either threat your power, then definitely it will be a problem for you. So it's understandable. And what we are saying is that we really need men to join us in this fight. It is not a selfish fight. It is not a fight that women are having for selfish gains. It is something that women are struggling for, because first and foremost, as women, we are human beings. We are equal human beings. So therefore, it is only right for our rights to be protected and promoted, just the same way the men's rights are. So it is not something that we are coming out of the blue to ask for. No, we are human beings, and it is our right to be able to exercise these rights. But also we need to understand that this is also coming from the fact that as women, we know the value that this brings. We know the value that comes from women being confident, being the confidence that Agnes alluded to. We know the value that comes from that. It's not something that will benefit us women alone, but it benefits the whole household. It benefits our children, it benefits the men, it benefits our communities, it benefits our country. When there's peace in the home, when men and women are equally enjoying their rights, it's a benefit that comes because there's food security, the livelihoods are boosted, women will invest more time, more energy, more technology, more, they will do more on the land, and therefore it will really overcome so many challenges that we face. So it is not a selfish fight, it is a fight that is looking at a bigger picture, where all of us, men, women, girls, boys, can benefit from this. And once we do not see that, then we are losing the point and we shall be left behind. And the question that you asked about involving men, it's very critical. We need men to understand that we are not fighting men. We love you guys. We love you men. We are our brothers, you're our husbands, you are our colleagues. We don't have anything against you as men. So what men need to understand is that we want men to join us in this fight because it's for a greater good. And what we are doing, for example, at our organizational level, is that actually we are working with men themselves to interrogate, to uproot, to engage around issues to do with social norms. We are working with men themselves as the facilitators in their communities, as the champions in their communities, as the role models in their communities. And we are seeing that that strategy really works. And there's an issue that Bana talked about, that some of these norms are actually good norms, and that's very true. Some of these norms are good, some are harmful. So communities need to be supported, especially men need to be supported to interrogate these norms and really identify those harmful practices. We are not saying all of them are bad, but we are saying let's look out and for those that are harmful to the woman, to the man, to the family, to the community, to the country, so that then we can find solutions to them. We can transform them into more gender responsive norms. So men coming on board as role models, as the leads in transforming these norms is very critical. And we really, in our approaches, not only UCOBAC, but all the partners that you see here, we all have approaches that have brought men on board. We are seeing men leading these processes in communities because they have seen the change that this brings to them as men, but also to the households.
Thank you so much, Francis. I love that. I love the fact that you said that we love you, we appreciate you, and all that. Now, let me come back here to Kemi Gishe. When you look at all this, there is something called titling, the title deed. Does the titling secure land for women?
Thank you, Chamagero, for that question. Now, let me first just speak very briefly about Francis's comment about your question on male involvement in conversations on land. It's almost impossible to have conversations about land without having the men, because the way the structure is set up, they have the power. They are at that table. So we're actually struggling to see
to get to the table.
Speaking about some of the work that FIDA did in northern Uganda with formerly abducted women through the cultural leaders in Kekwaro, you could see there are men that are running the system. I could say we registered some wins in there saying that more women are involved in the process. So it's impossible to have a conversation about land and actively not say men are involved, because they're the holders of power. So back to your question about that, many times when we have conversations about land and securing tenure, we quickly run to having land titles as a proxy for securing women's land rights, which is alone a very dangerous narrative to have. Why? Many times we've had instances where when we front titling, we forget the structural barriers that are in place that will make it difficult for a woman to use that land productively, even when she has a certificate of title. So what are we saying? That as we do encourage titling, go ahead, address the gender equitable normative frameworks. There are some discriminatory practices that are reinforced by laws and policies in this country by either their presence or by them not being there. I'll give an example of the marriage and divorce bill, which I think now is the marriage bill, right? We do not know where it is currently.
I'm praying.
And we know, like Bena mentioned, that many women in this country are not spouses in the legal understanding of spouse, which means that many of them, even if you title, we will still have those problems. So can we go to the root? Can we address land problems through the structures? Titling alone will not solve these problems that we are getting with land. So we must go back to the root. Let's address the challenges that women are facing. Are women involved in the conversations? We were talking about the certificate of customary ownership. Who is involved in the process of identifying where the boundary is? Are cultural leaders involved? What role are they playing? Are they actually interested in seeing that women achieve this goal? They get these certificates that we are running after, or we are putting pressure, Ministry of Lands to roll out. Who is involved in this process? Who is financing the area land committees? Who are the people in the area land committees that are making sure that these women get the title? So we need to address structural problems with structural solutions. And that's why I had a bit of a problem with the end of Jimmy's submission about the individual solution. You get?
Yeah.
Me, Elizabeth, a slave queen, will not prosper.
Come again.
Will still not work in my favor. So,
Yeah.
by and large, we need structural solutions.
Okay.
The structural
Now,
problems
this
that we
brings
have.
me to you, Dennis Obo from the Ministry of Lands. Are you still with us, Mr. Obo?
Yes, I am.
You can feel the fire online and in the studio here. The very last submission that comes in from Kemigisha, it's about structures. How are we weaving structures that are going to be inclusive, that it's not just about the ones who are legally married to the other parties, but even I've stayed with someone according to the bill that has taken, as many ages as to be assented to and signed into law. The ones who have babies with us, they have children with us, but they're not legally entitled to this title.
Thank you. I actually would like to disagree with some of those statements made, especially when it comes to customary land, because one of the most inclusive tenure systems, if sensitization and mobilization have been done well, has been the customary tenure system. It will take the women, it will take on board all the various categories, the girls, the youth, the minors, all vulnerable groups. But you ought to have got right the mobilization and sensitization. So what happens is that we do not leave it only to the area land committees to do it. And that's why we have partners. We sign MOUs with these partners, and we don't just sign MOUs with any partner. You ought to have the gender and development lens behind to look at the various perspectives, identify the various owners. Actually, in communities, in the customary system, there are so many categories of women. If you look at the register where they capture the names, you'll find all categories of women, the disabled women. These are the owners who have a stake, a claim. Disabled women, girls, youth, absentee persons, even if you're married in another place, you are taken as an absentee and you're added to this list. So it is, if we get the sensitization well, mobilization, and of course involving the cultural institutions, we have found that we have got the number of women registered as owners or co-owners increasing. Now, the most important thing to me is that whatever legal documentation comes out, at least the women need to have some sort of coloration. Their names ought to be somewhere, either in the register book or on the titles. And we have done this. We have sent back certificates, application forms, because they have come. You're registering, you want to register matrimonial land, it is having only one name. So you send it back and say, no, it must be all inclusive. We have trained the area land committees and others on what to look out for. And indeed, the outcome has tremendously changed. So for me, I believe that the challenges may be there, but the women need to be brought to the forefront. You need to involve them. They need to come to meetings. They need to see where the boundaries are to be able, of course, to provide evidence in the future. They are not just becoming owners per se, but they need to see whatever has been done. So at every stage, their involvement is critical. And of course, in the projects where we have done, it has been critical. So to me, I think
Mr. Obo,
the institutions...
Mr. Obo,
yes.
just a minute. You're saying that women should come to meetings where they're not invited. How do we arrive there? You're saying women should come to meetings as we're discussing land issues where cultural beliefs and some religious beliefs are not allowing women to come to the table. What is government doing to change this narrative from the cultural perspective and the religious perspective that we can now allow them to come? Not just you being on national television telling us that women should come to meetings, yet their cultural beliefs are not allowing them to.
Actually, I think that is not true. When a public notice is issued it invites everybody to come and attend the meeting. It calls women, children, everybody to come and be around and witness, see, hear, and make contributions. What we have done is to encourage women to speak at these meetings. They have taken place. And in some cultures, you'll find that the Acholi culture, for example, you have the Rot Query. Meetings take place at the Rot Query, but you also have the counterpart, the female counterpart, Rotokoro. She speaks on behalf of women. She airs their views. She does everything. So these entry points are the ones from culture that we have identified and used to bring women on board. Of course, in some cultures, it might be a challenge, but for some others, we have opened up and shown that we need to move away. Since the Constitution, of course, has barred those negative cultural practices, to move towards what is acceptable to us as citizens, because we need to respect our Constitution. The benefits of involving women, of course, are many, and these have been seen. We have registered titles in names of women as individuals, families, the many generations, from the widow who's a grandmother, all to her children, great-grandchildren. Women and girls have been on this. We have even seen titles where a chief has put all his 8 widows on a title, all his 8 wives on a title to hold land because each of them have children. By the way, what is interesting is that these all-inclusive systems have even put barren women because they believe that maybe in the future they may have children. So they've also been given land and they have owned it as women in their own rights. These are the good cultural practices that we should be looking out for and see how we bring them on board to capture, other than looking at negativity. If we look at fronting negativity, we are never going to move and we are going to lose an opportunity of achieving the 30% target of Kilimanjaro. I know it has worked. I have seen in communities where we have 75% of women coming to pick certificates. Actually, 75% of people coming to pick certificates at the sub-county are women. It is because we have got it right. Us and partners have sensitized, mobilized, told them what to do, the benefits. We have even prepared tutorials, which tutorials are directed towards women per se. In interventions that we are carrying out in the ministry, we have now even added specific meetings to women so that we target them to tell them what it means not to be on a title and what it means, the benefits of being on a certificate. So all these things are good. Legal documentation is something that everybody is pushing for, even the women. And of course, we have seen in courts, they have asked, where is the legal documentation to have to show your ownership? So if your name is not in any of those documentation, of course, definitely you lose out. So I think we shouldn't lose out on this. We need to join arms, hands together, put together, and make sure we capture as many women as possible. Sensitize women, men, traditional leaders, put them at the forefront.
Okay, Mr. Bo, I'll get back to you a little later. It's getting a little bit getty on your side, technology. Chiravo Agnes, if I could have you back. The conversation earlier on, Dennis Obo alluded to something that, they have registered 30,000 certificates about customary land. And not only that, Chiravo is off. Okay, now I've lost him. Let me come back to Benna here. He alluded earlier on that they have registered 30,000 certificates. And again, he said that there is a system where they can now track all these. He's talking this in a country where the digital spread and the reach of technology does not reach the women deep in Kabera Maido. How are we navigating such a challenge of the digital spread when we're dealing with the issue of land?
The truth, okay, it's not the truth. But when you talk about digitalization, we too are also looking at avenues on how to engage women. For example, just the past 2 days, we've had a conference, but we had to make sure that we got laptops, we got them into a room.
I love the women in Nairobi, the way they were speaking. I intended it.
Yes. So we had different groups of women from different regions. The fact is that if you have to, first of all, one thing we need to take note of is that times have changed. We're going into this digitalization era, but you need resources.
Yeah.
That's the reality. Is Africa ready for that? Ugandans, even me, I might have my smartphone, but once it collapses, you can't even afford one within a month because of issues of resources. Now, this is Bernadette Pakide, but I'm looking at the rural woman who does not even have a phone.
Narumans.
She might not be Nalumansi. We're looking at a woman deep down. Kapera Maido is just here nearby. Deep down there in Kapera Byong, Zombo, deep down there at the border. She doesn't have a phone. She can't afford everything that she needs to be part of the conversation. She needs resources.
Indeed.
And that is what we are saying. That we are heading into digitalization. Question is, how much are we investing into this digitalization? You know, enabling these women to access resources. And the only way, or majority of the women, the way they can access resources is through land. That is the reality. She will produce whatever she produces. If she has the powers or the mandate to sell the produce in a market and get some little money. That's what we're talking about. So the men are angry. We hear you. We know that it is about power. But the reality is, most of these men who are complaining, let them take 5 steps back. How did they get educated? Where did that money come from? When you look at Buganda, you hear, oh, Mama Wange, she used to sell matoke. That's how we were able to get school fees. You hear people in Ankole saying, oh, no, we sold cows. That's how we were able to get university fees. At the end of the day, it comes back to land. The question is, who is controlling that land? If you're controlling it as the owner, as the man, but how are you including this woman in that conversation? So when you talk about digitalization, yes, that's where we're heading. That's the reality because of COVID. But the question is, where are we getting these resources from? As a country, how are we investing into that sector? How much? I read somewhere when the our Honorable President said, we don't need Facebook. The reality is, Facebook, we learn a lot from Facebook. And these women, when they see themselves on the screen, they think they were internationally seen. They were internationally heard. So if you're blocking avenues where they are speaking, then you're basically, you're just disabling their powers to speak. They might not be contravening what you're talking about, but at the end of the day, can you give them that opportunity to speak? But the major point is, we need to have resources
as a country.
As a country.
Okay, on Twitter here, Akanduhura Peter Clever, I'm picking some tweets here that are very good about the conversation. He says, I like the conversation, and please, young women, if you start to say that this is uncomfortable for yourselves, you are doing a disservice to us who fight for your rights. I've seen many women who make use of land and actually take care of the whole community, particularly their families. Then Chagulanyi, okay, let me try to say the real name. Godly Monteiro. He says, I wouldn't be surprised if this came as a result of colonialism. There is a lot of evidence that women had a lot of power, and all this gender business was imported. We don't even have gender pronouns in most African languages. In Buganda, the king takes his mother's clan. Someone here says, the fear of land ending up in the hands of those who don't own it. Most of the things the women own end up in the hands of their husbands, who don't belong to the family and lineage of the girl's descent. That is the trick, Ochom. What's your comment on this, brother?
Yes, I just want to add to what Ben has said about digitalization.
Of the system?
Yes, of this. Recently, when we were having that conference, it was amazing to see that people in various parts of the country, even remote areas, were trying to tune in through the Zoom platforms. And we are in a situation where before even COVID came, we were having challenges with accessing internet, good quality internet, and internationally, if I'm wrong, or if I'm wrong, I know that it's a right to actually access internet, and it sometimes baffles me and saddens me when we are in COVID and most of the work is now done digitally, and only a few people in the urban areas are able to tap into that. So I think this is the time when government needs to think about this twice and know that prioritize what do we need now. People need to communicate, people need to talk to each other, people need to transact, and all the platforms are now digital, and it sickens me when I hear that the prices are high, taxes are levied on such amenities at this time. I don't have a problem if the taxes were heightened at a time not like this one.
And the services of quality.
Yes, and even, so I think we need to improve that. I think government needs to prioritize this because this COVID situation is not going anywhere, and it has also proved that use of Zoom and all those services is cheaper than actually having physical meetings. You can imagine if we had to spend, I don't know how many, we've had to invite
it's
all
around
those
70
people.
million.
Yes, that is a lot of money. I mean, we saved. So government should think about very many ways that they should save. I know that Magufuli, before he died, he had said no ministers will be flying out anyhow. I think some meetings you don't need to really fly out. You can have them in your country. So government needs to improve that. So that's what I just wanted to add on what Pena was talking about. Yeah.
Then someone here said the fear of land ending up in the hands of those in Uganda, and ideally, if I have land and I make my wife like we co-own the land, and I pass on, my family feels that they have given it away. Oh, let me bring it this way. I have my daughter, and I give my daughter property. My culture feels that if she gets married to you, then my property now is yours, because now the two shall become one. So they are looking at it as one of the hindrances that is possibly hindering men to embrace giving girls this property, and that's why Agnes's father gave her all that responsibility, but failed to facilitate her with the resource. How do we go about that?
So, giving that land to a girl and you still have feelings of how it should be managed gives me a feeling that you are giving with strings attached. When you hand over this book to Kemgisha and I say, Kemgisha, this is your book. You have the book. It means that I've ceased to have all the rights on that.
Let her use it as she pleases.
Yes, so she can use it as she pleases. So the problem is we are still fixed with the cultural norms, and that is the reason why people have that feeling of I'm giving, but what if he marries another, what if I die and he marries? You are, for Christ's sake, you are dead. So there is a person living on earth. So we need to make people understand that when an interest passes from one person to another, you cease to be the owner of that property. So that person who owns that property has the right to do whatever it is. But of course, culturally, we have to be guided. It wouldn't be good for...
That's why we need to find the harmony.
Yes, that's when I say culture may be bad, but also not so bad, because sometimes it streamlines us. It puts us in a for example, in my home area, our land, the one I inherit from my father, is not supposed to be transacted.
Whatsoever cost?
No, it's not supposed to be passed on to anyone else who is not in the clan.
Okay.
So you can only pass it on to anyone who has when you have a meeting and there is a reason. Maybe you're sick, you need to help someone out, you need to help yourself, or you need to educate, and you need to sit down in a meeting and tell these people. The reason why I'm selling this land is because I want to solve a certain situation and then they'll give you the go ahead. And that is why you find that many cultures in the east and north still have their land in their hands, because they have
the systems
a system in place that helps and supports in managing that.
You're dying to respond.
I'm not dying to respond. It's just saddening that at this point, it's really dehumanizing to women. We need to recognize women as full co-owners or full owners of land. They're just not mere members of communities. That even when we go back to the conversation we began with of issuing land titles, of registering interests in land, that a woman is a full human being on their own, like individually, because I think that fear is rooted in that feeling is rooted in the fear that women are going to flourish. You get, they don't deserve the right, and that's patriarchy.
And that is what Jackson here is saying, that when women get land, they become unruly. When they get money, they become unruly. They become bosse. Bakuba no kuba. Domestic gender-based violence. I'm coming to you, Bena. Just continue.
And yeah, it's really, my response is really simple. We need to start to recognize women as full human beings who are able to make decisions, of their own, either as individuals or as mothers or as leaders, as women doing work in communities, but not just as individuals, because they do not exist in vacuums. They exist in communities, in families. So my individuality will not even flourish if I'm not recognized in that community, in that family. And that's patriarchy, that it's rooted in hatred for women to be full human beings. Yeah, that's basically it.
Calm down. Kamisha is seated up. You wanted to add something?
I think it still takes us back. How did you acquire this property? Just to give comments to what Ochom. The issue of individualization, we need to also differentiate the issue you were raising, that my family members think that they have a right to my property. We need to differentiate between my property and that I purchased and family property. It is very crucial. Where we are having more struggles is in family property. Takalie chika. It's customary land because it's owned, governed, and all the structures are patriarchal in nature. That's where we're. But if it is my property, and it is your property, no one has a right to come and claim, because you are the one who toiled while you are still on earth. It is your sweat. It is your property. You have the absolute right to distribute it the way you want. It's the same thing with women. You have the absolute right decision, because you own that property. It is your sweat. So these things of, oh, Mwana Wagundi, Simanya, I have an uncle here. They have no decision-making powers. The only powers they can have is to give guidance. Guidance, now, not authority.
This is where the challenge comes in. I pass on, and in my will, I say this land will be governed by my brother Ochom, and Ochom will be the administrator of this estate until when my children are of age. It leaves the woman out. So how do we navigate that again?
Now that
calm down.
Now, and that is what we as LandNet, together with UOPA and the movement members, that's why we advocated for the amendment of the laws related to succession, to inheritance. The bill was passed on 31st of March, the Succession Amendment Bill. It's still a bill because the President has not yet assented to it. But for your information, the public out there, the men out there, the current laws that govern inheritance actually give me the right to give out my property to whoever, and you cannot dispute it. But the Succession Amendment Bill is actually rectifying that to ensure that there is gender equality. So that issue of whose property, who has rights, my children are still young, who has, the current law says it's only the men. It's only an uncle, either their grandfather or their male, and we're looking at the male lineage. It's either your brother or your uncle
or my son
or your son or your dad, like the children's
it's all male.
It's all male, but on your side. Me as a woman, I have no say, yet I'm the one who carried you for 9 months. I'm the one who sat with your father and we agreed to do this and that. I'm not part of it. So that is what we have changed in the bill. It clearly emphasizes that both the mother and the father have a right to decide who can be guardians. And I also want to emphasize this point. An administrator, administration does not mean ownership. People, let's not confuse those two words. Administration, I've given you the mandate to administer, to ensure that what I've written in my will, or actually administrators they're usually under someone who has died without a will. But let's say the executor, okay, I don't want to complicate the language, but the person I've appointed to put into effect my will, I'm not giving you powers of ownership. People, the public get that you are just administering. You're supposed to guide. You're supposed to inform the public that, oh, by the way, the late Andrew, God forbid, the late Andrew decided that this land should be kept or reserved, or this property or these apartments should be reserved for the education of my children. So my mandate is to ensure that the money that comes out of these properties, but do it in consultation with their mother. So all those people who are saying, he gave me powers, you people, we shall arrest you, I'm assuring you. You will be arrested. Okay. Not only by us, but by the Office of the Administrator General.
The law. Yes. We are having Agnes is back. Chirabo, Agnes, you're back with us here? Aggie, you're back? Okay, Agnes, the conversation has kept on going again and again. There is someone who sent in a tweet, and the tweet was, he grew up seeing the mother toil again and again, but whenever the harvest came from the land, it was the father to count how much, and she was never given. This is something you see on a daily when you're dealing with communities. How do we address that, Agnes? Agnes, I can't hear you. Can you unmute your sound, your microphone? Unmute your sound.
Yes, I have unmute, but I didn't also get to the question. Can you please come again?
Okay, someone sent in a tweet and said that he experienced his father and mother. The mother was tilling the land, but whenever the harvest was due and sold off, the father was the one to count the money, and he never gave the mother any of those proceeds. How do we navigate such challenges, given that you deal with these in the community outreaches you deal with?
I wish to assure that that person on the tweet that is not alone. It is actually what is happening to many women at the countryside, because that is what they with, that they are laborers and they are treated like laborers. But this is what we have done. We have sat with these communities, we have sat with these households. Like in FRA, we have a model, we call it a farm planning model. And with that farm planning model, the principle number one is household food first and everything later. So we encourage the households to first sit together and agree that, and when they agree, the household food first, and we have seen wonders happening in these households. One, because they first mobilize their resources, including the family labor, to work on the
internet. Aggie, I think we'll get back to Aggie a little later. The internet is dragging. If just for speech it's dragging, how about the portals? Dennis Obo, I'm sure you're there and you're listening and you're following this conversation. Dennis, I would like to understand, what other models are you using to make sure that whatever registration you're doing, the public, especially the women from the village level, they can access this information if they're not tech savvy, if they're not, more informed with how technology operates? What other models do you have on ground?
Thank you. Now, issues of technology definitely are important and will always come out. But we have tried to ease things, especially in this land registration process for those on customary land. Now, we all agree the first thing is that women need to have legal documentation, and they must be included on whatever legal documentation is given. So from our side, what we have told them, actually, all you need is to have your identity card, national identity card, because you ought to be a citizen, you must be recognized, and two, have your mobile phone number. Those two should be enough for us, the time being, to be able to capture you. We use proper tools that have been developed, many have been developed. We have customized some of UN Habitat's GLTN. We even have our own tool, Slack tool. These tools are used by the area land committees, the district land boards, and the recorders to capture. So they go to the women, they go to the men, they go to the landowners, and they use these tools to capture that digital information. Now, the goodness is that the training is done to those who reach the women. So they speak the local language and get the responses typed in English on these tools, and then they forward them to the next land administration institutions. Now, this has solved the gap of making sure that at least women are captured and included in whatever interventions we do. And also, it is important, actually.
Dennis, just a minute before you go forward. So what happens to women who have no phones? And what is the margin of error of the information captured by your team on the ground vis-a-vis the reality on the ground?
Now, those issues of margin of error are issues of technical staff, our technical staff. And indeed, they have worked on them to try to reduce that. You'll note that when we are producing a title, a customer title, it now has coordinates. Those coordinates can be used to actually go back and identify the boundaries where the women and men have planted their traditional markers. So it shouldn't be a problem. It is as good as a survey. And that information has been used to go back and trace the boundaries where we have had cases of freeholds being done on top of CCOs, and they have been resolved. So the margin of error should not be a problem. The most important challenge we should be moving to now is making sure that women are included and get legal documentation that they can use to show that the land they have, the land they own, they have that conclusive evidence. If we can go that way, then we shall move. But if we start getting to issues of surveys, we may have challenges, we may not move, we may not have legal documentation coming out.
What happens to women without phones?
Yes.
Dennis, what happens to women without phones? How are they protected and secured?
No, the land forms are given out by the area land committees free of charge. As I speak now, we have an intervention that is taking place in Apache, Maracha, and Agago.
Okay.
The forms have been given to women and men free of charge. All they have to do is to pay an application fee of 5,000. So the costs are actually not that high. It is affordable. And remember, what we are doing is formalizing the local transactions at that local level. So for now, we ought to make things as simple as possible. The fees shouldn't be high, and the fact that it is systematic, the costs are subsidized by government. That is the first step. We encourage women who cannot meet those costs to come in, and we see how we come in to help them, so that at least for the first transaction that is coming out, women are actually not left out.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And it's a conversation we're having. Those on Twitter, I love the language you're using and the flow of the conversation. Mary Francis, what could be your parting shots as we're finalizing this conversation from your perspective as an activist on the ground dealing with women going forward?
Okay, thank you. I think my parting shots would be that I think we are taking good steps. We are taking steps to the right direction. It's not enough, but we can do more. I think what we are doing, what the civil society organizations are doing in partnership with government is something good, and we must appreciate the efforts that are there thus far to advance women's land rights. However, we need to do more. I just wish to give confidence to men, especially, that really what we are talking about is possible. I am an example of one, unlike Agnes, my father in his will only gave girls land. As in individually, each girl got land. And then the rest of his estate, he put all the boys in there and all the girls, so we can still benefit even from the bigger chunk. But he made sure that every daughter of his was protected with a portion of land, or allocated land. So if my father, who is not a youth, a man of long ago, my late father could do it, why can't any other Ugandan do it? So it is possible, it is doable, it is beneficial if we all look at women as valuable human beings that have a role to play, that if they are given this resource, this critical resource, that we shall work together to advance our homes, but also to advance the country. So for me, my parting shots is to really thank the partners, that the members of the Women Land Rights Movement, civil society organizations, government, Ministry of Lands, Ministry of Gender, that let's continue, doing what we are doing and listen to each other and learn the best ways in which we can advance women's land rights, because I think we are doing something and we can continue to do something if we work together.
Thank you so much. That is Mary Francis giving us that. Agnes, do I have Agnes back? Chirabo Agnes, do I have you back?
Yes, I'm around.
Yes, Chirabo, what are your parting shots as we're finalizing this conversation in 2 minutes?
I wish to appeal, especially to men, just like Francis has said, please don't be the last one. The kind of arguments you're having are the kind of arguments people had in regard to educating the girl child, in regard to allowing women work. But those who hesitated and had all those reasons like the ones you're having now, they have come late when they are far behind. So please, it is also barbaric thinking that you can only rule the poor. Because I can hear that mindset, when you give the women land, when you're having this conversation, how could you, Andrew, you've been our buddy, how could you host such a conversation? The women are going to become unruly because when they get land, they are going to be rich, they are going to be so proud. Please, that is out-fashioned thinking that you can only govern the poor. Actually, good governance and better governance is when each party in a relationship is equally bringing an equitable contribution. Wow. So fellow men and fellow women, please don't lag behind like those who lag behind in educating their girl children. And like others have said, the benefits that come through or that accrue from women owning property, actually, like they say, that educating a woman is educating a nation. Empowering a woman with property, with entitlements, is empowering and strengthening that particular family. And it is empowering and strengthening that particular society, community, and the entire country. The reasons why we are struggling with poverty levels, especially at the countryside, is because the laborers are using resources that they don't own. Over 70% of the labor in the agriculture sector is being provided by the women, who have to fold their hands and wait for the men to dictate where they should farm while the rains have long gone. So this is a struggle in the interest of all of us. After all, we are not here forever. So let us move together. Let us support each other. We assure you, you will thank us later. Try it. Andrew, starting with you and Jimmy, Try it, you will thank us later.
I've tried it. Thank you so much, Agnes. That means a lot. Let me just now come to Benna. What are your parting shots? The other ones who are online, I'll read your feedback when we're done here, Benna.
My parting shots. I call upon His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Uganda. Can you kindly assent to the Succession Amendment Bill so that we're able to protect property of those who have passed on? Right now, the state in which we are in, you just gave an example. People are taking advantage of the lacuna that is existing. Can we have a law that governs marriages in Uganda? The marriage bill. I call upon the parliamentarians, the new ones who are in parliament. Can we have this bill tabled? It's actually a bill of parliament. But it will ensure that women are able to not only own, but to access and use this land peacefully during their marriage, but even upon separation or even upon death of one of the spouses. I call upon the government of Uganda. Can we fast track the amendment of the laws related to land, the land acquisition bills? We have so many laws that Jimmy mentioned them earlier on. They are not in conformity with the national land policy. But all these laws are there. We need them because they provide a framework. But secondly, can I call upon the government? Can we have resources? Can we finance these processes? I'm not calling on development partners, but also we need political will into these processes. Because if you don't have the political will, I mean, it's lost cause. The first mandate is on the state to ensure that there's a framework, that it will work and it will be effective for the development of this country. Because we are talking about land.
Thank you so much, Benna Ochom. What are your parting shots here?
For the men out there, I know that there are comments that came in. But I want to encourage the men, especially the married men, that your wives are your friends. So
they're companions.
You're your companions. So if you cannot trust them with that, then that means you didn't really take time to be in that marriage. So let us support our women. Let us encourage them. You know, I am a married man, but I always I've realized something, that every time I try and ask questions together with my wife on issues that are very important to our lives, it makes her happy and it makes the home a peaceful home. So if you want peace in your homes, please, men, involve these women, encourage them, bring them close to the table and talk to them about the issues of land. And also, you know, yesterday I was listening to something in the conference, and one of the panelists said that those men who are not giving chances to their wives to inherit property, yet they have done a lot. They warm your beds, they cook your food, they give you an environment which enables you make more money. Some of you are poor before you're married, now you have money and you're changing the way you think. So we need to support our wives to enable us also improve our livelihoods.
Kemigisha, what are your parting shots?
I can't believe we're on national television begging men to please do the right thing. But that is where I want to say. Anyway. But anyway, seriously, focusing alone in context of this conversation, I just want to add my voice to what Mary Francis said, to what Benna said in terms of policy, but also just to emphasize, titling alone or documentation can be counterproductive if we do not address the persistent barriers that women face in accessing information on land, in accessing resources to invest in the land, in being in a home, a society free from GBV, in them being able to participate in processes on succession, inheritance, and in all these conversations on area land committees and etc and DCC. Mr. Obo made a comment about the fact that we are reaching out, we are calling you people come. There are issues if the meetings are sitting between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. and that's the time when women are in the gardens. Then, and it's the role of the state, like Benna says. So adding on the policy reviews and policy strengthenings, let's address the persistent barriers. That's the only way.
Well, thank you so much, Kemigisha Elizabeth from FIDA. She's an advocacy officer. Akutui Stella Rose says women are still burdened by the gender roles that do not allow them attend those meetings and get the information. We also need to be mindful of the time we organize those meetings. That's actually what you're actually alluding to here. And the other person here says that Chamagero, let's be very honest here, the women are tied their hands in the back and then we say, let's run the same race. We should change that as men of this country. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. I really want to thank you. Those who sent in comments that were a little bit sensitive, I didn't read them because it's my job to guide the narrative of the conversation. Thanks to our sponsors, Oxfam. We have the UN Women. We have a True Claire. And of course, we have Action Aid, not forgetting the women lands rights movement. Be a part of this conversation. It doesn't stop here. Every other day, be the champion of the women rights when it comes to land. I'm Andrew Chamagiro. Good afternoon.